Good morning, everyone. This is Chris Johnson with ACAS, and I'm going to be introducing our presenters for today's webinar, which is Healthy Indigenous Foods Policy Work in the Lower Sioux Community. And so first we have Stacy Hammer. She's an enrolled member of the Lower Sioux Indian community. She began her career as the registered dietitian and diabetes coordinator for the Lower Sioux community in May of 2013. Stacy obtained a Bachelor's of Science degree in Nutrition and Dietetics from Minnesota State University, Mankato, and completed her graduate dietetic internship program from the University of Delaware with an emphasis in clinical and community nutrition. Stacy's role involves working with tribal members within all life cycles and educating on a variety of nutrition-related conditions. Her collaborative work with the American Indian Cancer Foundation has focused on efforts to normalize healthy eating within American Indian communities in Minnesota, along with the development of the Healthy Native Foods Toolkit. Stacy also serves as the Lower Sioux Title VI Director, responsible for administering the nutrition requirements and menu planning for the Elder Nutrition Program. She enjoys working individually with clients of all ages and working together as a team to accomplish their nutrition and healthy lifestyle goals. And next we have Julie Ralston Aoki. She is the Director of Healthy Eating and Active Living at the Public Health Law Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. She works with communities, public health staff, advocates, and researchers on legal strategies and policies to improve health equity and reduce and prevent chronic disease. Currently, much of her work focuses on strategies to reduce sugary drink consumption, improving the nutritional quality of food in public places, supporting policies and practices for healthier child care and learning environments, commercial tobacco control, and tribal public health policy development. She is the past president and current member of the Minnesota Community Health Worker Alliance Board. She also serves on the advisory committee for the Model Tribal Food Code Project of the Indigenous Food and Agricultural Initiative. So with that, I'll let Stacy and Julie take it over.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Again, as Chris just mentioned, I'm Stacy Hammer. I'm a registered dietitian here at our new clinic, the Lower Sioux Health Care Center. We're located in Morton, Minnesota. We just opened our first ever clinic on a reservation in March of 2015, so we're coming up on our first year anniversary. Before our clinic opened, we had a small community health office that's grown over the last couple of years. We started with about 3 employees and now have grown in the last 3 years to over 20 employees here in the clinic. So a lot of change over a short amount of time. It's been a very exciting time here in our community. So with that, with the next slide here, I'm just going to give you a little background information on our community here. We are a federally recognized Indian tribe located in south central Minnesota in Redwood County. Our community center is located on the southern bluffs of the Minnesota River Valley. And again, as I just mentioned, our healthcare center, the picture down there below on the left is a picture of our new clinic. We have approximately 145 families who live on approximately 1,743 acres of tribal land. We have approximately 982 tribal members that reside within a 10-mile service area and beyond. And we are governed by a 5-member tribal council. The picture there on the bottom right is our recreation center. So a lot of our community health work is done in that building. We have a full-size gym in there. We have a multi-purpose room, and we have a fitness room located in there. To the left of that, you don't see in the picture, is our tribal government center. So just a little background on our history and the vision of our community. So we are the members of the Lower Sioux Indian community, which is part of the Mdewakanton Band of Dakota. So there are 4 bands of Dakota in the state of Minnesota. We're one of 4. The Dakota, which translates closely to friend or ally in our language, referred to our traditional Minnesota River Valley homeland as Shan Shayapi, where the trees where they mark the trees red. The vision, we just, as a community, came up with this vision here about a year ago with the help of our tribal planner at the time, Teresa Peterson. The vision of the Lower Sioux Indian community is a healthy, safe, and happy community grounded and guided by Dakota culture, traditions, and language, where every person contributes to a diversified social and economic life People grow, adapt, and innovate together through opportunities that span the generations and seek continuous success. So that vision was put together through focus groups held in our community over a period of a couple of months here with different groups of community members. So.
And good morning, everyone. So I'm Julie Ralston Aoki, and I'm very happy to be here and so excited to be presenting here with Stacy and with the American Indian Cancer Foundation on this terrific work. I've been with the, well, as Chris mentioned, I'm the Director of Healthy Eating and Active Living here at the Public Health Law Center, and I've been here with the center 10 years coming this March. And some of you may have maybe have met before, have heard about the center, but in case there's anyone who is on the webinar who hasn't heard about the center, I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we do. We are a nonprofit legal technical assistance center located at the Mitchell-Hamlin School of Law in St. Paul, Minnesota. Our mission is to help people use the power of law to improve health. And so we work with public health officials, decision makers, researchers, advocates, and communities at the local, state, federal, and tribal level to support development of public health laws and policies that are grounded both in good science as well as good law, and that are tailored to be workable and right for each specific community. In the tribal public health law and policy context specifically, I think it's important to say that we are not a tribal or Native-led organization, and so we recognize that our role really is to support and help tribal public health officials and advocates to shape and achieve their goals, but not to drive or set the agenda. Next slide, please, Chris. So for our work, we focus on laws and policies that are related to preventing and reducing chronic disease, which means we focus basically on these three areas: the area of reducing the harms of use and exposure to commercial tobacco, and supporting and promoting healthy food systems and healthy native food systems in the case of tribal food systems, and healthy eating from a holistic perspective. And we also do work to support laws and policies that encourage and support physical activity as part of daily life. So we are not a traditional law firm or kind of a group of attorneys, although most of us are attorneys. We also have some MPHs and policy analysts on our staff. But we don't do things like we don't enter into attorney-client relationships or typically represent people in court. We also, as a matter of our own policy, don't lobby. But what we do is provide this thing called technical assistance, which in this context means things like doing legal research for people who are working on public health issues to help them understand the lay of the law around the issue that they're working on, and where the law or policies might present opportunities or where they might present challenges. We help then also with the process of policy development, a lot like what you're going to hear about today. And then we take sometimes our research and our experiences and the questions that we're hearing from communities on legal issues, and we use that learning to create some publications to provide more general support for the field working on issues. And then we do trainings like webinars or conference presentations, much like this one, to share about the work of developing good public health laws and policies. And so, we've been working on crafting our elevator speech, and so here I'm going to try this out on you guys here. This is in a nutshell, this is how we see our work. That the driving force of our work is to help public health advocates like yourself and kids like Drew and Mio here to have healthy choices available to them, and also to want to choose them. And I'm happy to say that Mio there is my daughter, so I get to feature her in my presentation. Okay, and so with that, we're going to dive into the topic of the day, which is the work of the Lower Sioux community on this healthy food policy work, and I'm going to turn it back over to Stacy.
Okay, so as far as the learning objectives, we're just going to go over some key questions to ask about how your tribe can develop and adopt these policies. I'm sure Julia will get into it later, but talking about how different each tribe's laws and the process is, and how it was here at Lower Sioux with Julie working with our tribal attorney and tribal council. And also sharing an example of how a tribe worked with a vending machine company to get healthy snacks into the vending machine. So I'll be talking about that process and what that looked like.
And I'm sorry, Stacy, I will acknowledge the first gaffe of the day that I was supposed to do that.
That's okay. I saw that. I'm like, that was Julie, but that's okay. We're all in this together. So I'm guessing that the audience here will understand that we're probably going to be very anecdotal here in our presentation. So so with that, I wanted to talk about the formation of the Lower Sioux Health and Human Services Advisory Committee. So again, this started with a conversation with the American Indian Cancer Foundation in that we recognized, again, like I said, we were a very small community health office that has grown. When our director came on board, if you look at the picture on the bottom of the screen here, to the far right is Darren Prescott. He is a member of the Lower Sioux Indian community as well. He is just finished his doctorate in nursing practice, but he is our clinic CEO, and he came on board, I think about a year after I started here. I started in May of 2013, and he started January of 2014. So once he came on board, we just started building, and really started looking out for different grant opportunities and that, and wanting to hear more about what the community had to say about the health of the families here within our community. And in talking with the American Indian Cancer Foundation, we thought, how do we even start a committee? How can we get to that point so that we have a group of individuals from our community that we're getting different voices? So we're not just sitting in our little offices making these decisions based on the community, on what we think. We want to hear from our community members. So that is the premise of forming the committee. So again, in partnership with the American Indian Cancer Foundation, we put together a Community Health and Human Services Advisory Committee to serve the areas of health and social services. There are 8 members, so as you see the picture there, we have 6. 2 were unable to make it for the picture that evening. We tried different dates. Summer is a tough time with parents and activities and that. We're still trying to get everyone together to get a picture. And when we have all this together, we always forget to take the picture, unfortunately. So that is one of the pictures of at least 6 of the 8. Darren Prescott and myself started with the committee. We started as support staff, so we're not actually committee members. And as the committee started meeting and more opportunities came available and more employees came on, we have a couple of other key staff employees that have joined in on the meetings as well, which I'll talk about later. So what we did is the process was we had a community Sioux Chef dinner actually in January of 2015. So if you're not familiar with the Sioux Chef, you can look him up, Sean Sherman, who is located in Minneapolis. He came out and did an Indigenous foods demo for us, and so it drew a pretty decent crowd. So we had, I believe, almost 200 people in attendance that evening, community members. And so we had placed ballots on the tables, put them into 4 different categories of, and explained to our community members that evening, that we were forming this committee. This is what the community's work will involve, and asking them to place names on the ballot of people that they can think of within our community that would be great members of this committee. So we came up with a very diverse group. So we have elders representing the group. We have parents. We have just a diverse group here. So from different families too, because like I mentioned, we are a small community. So we didn't want one family represented. We wanted multiple families represented, and we have that within our committee currently. So after that process, we collected the ballots. We talked to each of the people on the ballots and asked and let them know what these roles were going to involve in, and if they would be interested in being part of the committee. We initially decided we would meet every other month, but shortly, I think 6 months into it, we said we have to meet once a month because we would gain momentum and then not speak again for another 2 months. So I think that summer then we decided we needed to meet monthly. But again, like I mentioned, the first meeting was held on March 26th of 2015, and to date, we've now had 17 committee meetings total. We did come up with a long-term goal, and again, that was, I should mention, with ACAF support, we have Melanie Kuzinski and Amanda Dion, who are absolutely wonderful, if any of you have ever met them. Of course, everyone at ACAF is amazing, but these two we always laugh. We say that they've pretty much been adopted by our tribe, so now they have dual citizenship with their tribe and our tribe. So luckily, like I said, we're only located about 2 hours from the city, so it's not a whole lot of too much travel time, I should say, although I'm guessing they may have a different idea of that since they are out here monthly. But they are amazing, and what they did is they kind of got our committee talking and coming up with these different strategies, objectives, and goals for the committee and the committee's work. So we started off right away with an activity that put together this long-term goal, and which is to increase community engagement to establish a sustainable Lower Sioux Indian community food system that improves access to healthy food, connects the community to Indigenous foods, and creates healthier families. So that was our vision after the first couple of meetings of doing some different activities and putting that together. So some of the roles and responsibilities of committee members is providing input towards programming, grant funding use, and community needs by staff in each of these areas. So anytime a grant funding idea comes across our table, we bring that to the committee and we ask their opinion on, what they think of this opportunity, what they can foresee, and so that helps us in the grant writing process as well. And programming, it's great to hear from the committee members on what they think programming should look like here, not just at the clinic level, but also, like I mentioned, in our recreation center with community health, with our kids programming, with our elder programming. So we do get a lot of input from them on that as well. And as I mentioned, we meet once a month with the committee, and it is co-facilitated. So every month, Amanda and Melanie drive out here, and meetings tend to run about 2.5 hours. We typically have a meal, start with a prayer, and go over our agenda every night, at every meeting. And they've also, ACAF has also been providing education. Since we've been really working heavily on this policy work, we haven't been doing the education piece as much, although we're constantly being educated now with this policy work and working with Julie on the legal aspects of policy work. But in the beginning of the work here with the committee, ACAF would bring a speaker out and educate the committee on different health areas of need or of focus that they wanted to hear about at the next meeting as well. But also providing input on programming needs of ACAF and collaboration between ACAF and committee members have assisted in meeting cancer prevention and educational needs within Indian country as well. And I would like to mention too, go on.
I was just going to say, Stacy, that I just think from a policy development perspective, like having a committee like this is really terrific and a wonderful resource. And, I'll talk about this more later, but just really impressed with the work that you've done, the committee has done, and that ACAF and you and Darren have done with the committee to build their knowledge and in the passion that the committee brings to the work. So I feel like this is a great model for many communities to think about.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. Okay. Yeah, it's really interesting in talking like with Julie and people that come into the meetings. I think just being a part of the process from the beginning, I don't know anything different than what we're doing here. So and hearing people that come into our meetings, it's always reassuring, and it feels really good to hear that that all of this is making a difference, and that. But again, I attribute a majority of all of this to our community members and ACAF for all their support. And one other thing I should mention too is we do talk about tobacco prevention as well in our meetings. But again, like I mentioned, with the last 6 months of working really hard and heavy with this healthy foods policy work, that's what we've been focusing a lot on. But I'll get into some of the tobacco prevention work later on. So as far as our list of accomplishments, I have a couple of slides on this, but I wanted to speak about just the first half of our time with the committee. Like I said, we're coming up on 2 years since our first meeting. So committee chair and committee roles were identified on October 21st of 2015. As I mentioned, March was our first meeting. So at that point, we kind of decided that we probably should work on having a little bit more structure as far as within the committee. So we had a vote, and Ann O'Keefe is Beth O'Keefe. Sorry about that. If Beth's listening, that would be her sister Ann. But Beth is actually our chairwoman for our committee, and she's very passionate about this work. So it's just so wonderful to have our community members like Beth chairing our committee. Health foods prioritizing activities. So that was our policy systems and environmental strategies. That Melanie and Amanda had a wonderful activity that really helped us conceptualize what we were trying to do and what we should be focusing on. And I have to say, and if they're listening, they're going to laugh because when we sit down in these meetings, it's so easy to digress and go into different topics and different conversations. And they're so good at eloquently getting us back to where we need to be. And we do a lot of laughing and we have a lot of fun, but we do a lot of hard work. So it's great having those two keep pulling us in all the time and reminding us why we're there and keeping us on track so that we are able to accomplish what we need to accomplish by the end of the evening. So that healthy foods prioritizing activity helped us in the early stages get to where we are today. Funding secured for communities eliminating tobacco inequities. That is through Blue Cross Blue Shield. And that is where Kara Toole, who is our certified health education specialist, came in. So we were able to hire one of our community members. We were so pleased and so excited. She had recently graduated from University of Minnesota Duluth with her bachelor's degree in community health education. So we were so pleased and blessed that we came upon this opportunity and we're actually funded for it. So Darren and I wrote that grant, and we were just so excited that we were able to have this opportunity and bring Kara on board. And so she works with tobacco prevention. So she also sits on the committee as a support staff with Darren and I. The next big great news for us was that we were funded for the Nota Begay Foundation Community Action Grant. So again, this pulled in where we are today in helping us come up with this policy work, because that's what this Community Action Grant through Nota Begay, that's what the work is all about, is coming together. And it's not necessarily programming or activities or events. It's there to help support this policy work that we're working on right now. So with that, we were able to hire another community member. Courtney Toole was actually Kara's sister, and she has been absolutely wonderful. We've been so excited. She's just so energetic and so great with our kids, so she works a lot with the rec center, with the kids on programming, and she also has been sitting with us at each of the committee meetings as support staff as well. So March 2016, we had our kickoff event, and that was part of the evening where we had basically a dinner for the evening for our community members, and we talked about the work that we want to do in the future and letting them know where the committee is at. Because, you know, when we formed this new committee, it was a new committee in the community, so we want to make sure that the community members are aware of our committee, of the committee here, and what they are doing, so that they're not, you know, so that they're in the loop and they actually can, you know, again, getting input from them as well through the committee. So the kickoff event, we announced, you know, again, who our committee members were, what kind of work we've been doing. Beth, our committee chairwoman, spoke that evening as well. And we talked about different gardening events, and we put out a survey for our youth and for our adults as well on what they want to see in our community for surrounding the Healthy Foods initiative that we're working on. And then the NHNA, that's the Native Health News Alliance, did an article on our work. So that was pretty exciting. I was interviewed for that, and that was online, talking about where our work was at that point. So again, I think I mentioned this later on in the presentation, but with collaboration and partnerships with different Native and non-Native organizations, again, has really been helping us with this work. And the last one here, up until through August 2016, before our resolution was signed, we had funded through Aetna for our new project with Chozani, which is good overall health in the Dakota language, cultivating healthy behaviors. So again, another opportunity to continue the work that we're doing and help more with the programming and that. And again, hearing more from our community through different surveys, focus groups, and that will be a big piece of that work as well.
So we're going to take a little bit of a side trip now because, and just talk about some, back up a little bit to talk about some of the foundational process laying for policy development. So, as Stacy talked about, the committee was meeting and talking about sharing ideas about what they thought would be good things for the committee to recommend or focus on. There was a survey that went out. So the committee was doing this work with the help of ACAF of identifying the policy areas they wanted to focus on. And eventually when we got more involved with this, with the work was in August, when the committee had settled on several priorities around looking at what was in some of the vending machines in the government center and the rec center, looking at the employee dining program, looking at what kind of food was being sold or offered at the annual powwow, and then thinking about more broadly across the community, the types of food outlets that are there. The tribe owns and operates a convenience store, so looking at those as well and thinking about how can we promote more healthy and indigenous foods in these areas. And so we got involved when these policy ideas were had been landed on, and so then it was our task to start thinking about how do you put these policy ideas into writing. And that's where, of course, a center or a group like us can really provide some help and advice. And so one thing I think is important to understand is that, because I get this question all the time, like should we do it as an ordinance or should we do it as a resolution or how does that work, is that just like any body of law, there are multiple areas where the law can sit. And that's, of course, just as true for tribes. And so I have this list here on the slide of all the different types of policies or laws that are out there that tribes are using to implement policy. And so you have, I'm just going to kind of walk through it all, but there's executive orders where the tribal president or tribal chief, whatever the title is, can issue an executive order, much like what we're seeing happening these days with President Trump, but issuing executive orders to govern how certain aspects of the tribal government may operate. There's also resolutions where that are policy statements. They can be stronger, like in the form of more like a law, but some tribes use them more as commitments or statements of support for an issue. Ordinances is another word for just a law, and sometimes some tribes use resolution or ordinances. I mean, they mean the same thing. It just really depends. So, it can get kind of confusing when you're talking about this language. And then there's the word code or code sections. And again, that can mean the same thing as an ordinance, or it can mean something different. It all just depends on the terminology or the legal system within the tribe. And then tribes also have constitutions, and that's where law can sit, as well as case law. Tribal judges are making law through their court opinions. And then, of course, another important body of law for tribes is customary law, which is often unwritten laws, which are held within the knowledge of elders within the community, and so are something that is very different from the Western style of laws, the legal system that I've been trained in, but are nonetheless a very important body of law. And one thing that I don't have up here actually, which I need to add, is there's also things like administrative regulations. Some tribes have their various government departments may also issue like what we think of as like agency rules or agency regulations to implement the laws of the tribe. So these are all the ways that tribes make law. And when you are thinking about this process of developing a food policy or whatever kind of law or policy, it's really helpful to understand, how your tribe talks about laws and then how it makes these laws. And so really, when people ask me what should we use a resolution or should we use an ordinance or should we try to do a code section? The bottom line answer is like it really just depends on what your tribe does. And so it's important just to do this piece of research. And so this is related to a larger point about the role of having good information and data in policy making. So I love this quote from a report called Feeding Ourselves, which some of you may be aware of. It's a report that came out I think, maybe 2 years ago now almost. We'll feature it in the resources section, but it was written by Janie Hipp and her colleagues at the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative and supported by the American Heart Association. And it really, it's kind of a long report. If you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, I encourage you to do that, even though it is, like I said, kind of long, because it has some really terrific information. It really just lays out the landscape for from federal down, starting at the federal level, about all the things that can impact food systems in Indian country, and then identifies some great examples and areas where tribes are doing very innovative and courageous things. And provide some recommendations and ideas for future work. So it's a terrific resource. But one line that I pulled from this resource is about the importance of good data. And I like to interpret the word data broadly to include not just things like facts and figures and statistics like you might think of, but also more broadly like information that is needed to really help inform the policy process and help you come to a good policy at the end of the road. And so I think about the three kind of main buckets where good information or good data is helpful. And Chris, if you could take us to the next slide. And so that would include, of course, just information about what kinds of laws or policies are out there, what's being tried, are there already some lessons learned about those experiences. And then, of course, there are over 570 tribes, so that means there are over 570 examples of how to do things, of approaches, legal systems. So it's not like a one-size-fits-all situation in any way, shape, or form. So like learning about those different examples and models is really helpful. And so you can get that information, of course, there's from your own tribe, your own community. There's a wonderful food sovereignty assessment tool that First Nations has developed. And then, of course, by talking with the people in your community, like the committee, the Lower Sioux Health and Human Services Advisory Committee, which includes members of the community, but also has been doing work to engage sectors within the Lower Sioux community in this work. So gathering that kind of information is important, as well as then the kind of more typical facts and figures type of data. Understanding, say, if you're talking about a food policy and you're trying to think about how do we promote access to healthy and then traditional or indigenous foods within our community, understanding first what are the reasons why you need this, and looking at your health data. So if you have a clinic or a hospital in the area that's done a community health needs assessment, I mean, that's a terrific source of data. There are also tribal epidemiological centers which collect health data for tribes in their service area. So there's other sources too. So thinking about where you can get that data so that when you're making the case for your policy, like what are the rates of diabetes, or what are the rates of heart disease, to just sort of, again, make the foundational case for why you're doing what you're doing. That's good data to have too. And then also, finally, as I was talking about, the knowledge about your tribe's legislative process. And I know I'm sort of repeating that, but I think that is really an important piece of information. And it's one that actually advocates across the board and in many areas of our work we find, they typically just aren't focused on that piece. They're so focused on the end goal of creating the policy that thinking about, how do then we, once we have our idea and we're ready to go, like, how do we turn that into action, is often an afterthought. And so we like to encourage people to think about that early on, so that at each step of the way they can be thinking about how they're going to operationalize their goals and be in the best position they can to be dealing with their tribal council or their legislative body to get that policy implemented.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, I'm glad you just mentioned that. That was something the committee and us as support staff, that was a huge question we had, because we keep talking about this and we'll just put this policy together and it'll just be, we'll ask council to sign off on it. It's just, we had no idea what this really entailed. So we are so grateful to Julie and her expertise and her ability to work with all of us, and also working with our attorney, our tribal attorney here at the Lower Sioux. So yeah, it was a much bigger process than we ever imagined. So we've been learning so much, and then still learning, definitely still learning. So so as the slide says, again, we had the adoption of our resolution signed on September 20th, 2016. It was kind of crazy because we were having our wellness dinner that evening, and we had pretty much had it finalized between Julie and Lenore Scheffler, our tribal attorney here at the Lower Sioux. And so we were waiting, hoping and waiting for those signatures to come through. I really, really, really wanted to announce it that evening at our wellness dinner, because we knew we were going to have a couple of hundred of our community members present, and we really wanted to make this announcement and just see the excitement of our community in reading the key portions of this resolution. So 2 hours before the dinner, we actually saw it be signed, and or I shouldn't say saw it. We actually had it handed to us and signatures on it, and we were really, really excited to bring it forward that evening and let the community know what this means and what's to come. And everyone applauded and was really excited to hear that we were going to be making these changes, because again, we've held surveys, we've had focus groups, we know what our community really wants to see as far as the future of our health. So we knew this is something that knowing that tribal leadership is on board with that and that they're going to start seeing these changes was really exciting for all of us that evening. So.
Hey, Stacy, can I just jump in for a second?
Sure. Yeah.
Because you reminded me that there was something I meant to say and I forgot to say earlier.
Sure.
Was just speaking with your tribal council and Lenore Scheffler. She, it was really great to engage with her and let her know about talk to her about what the committee was working on. I mean, I know you had also been in conversations with her, and I think that was also a really, I think, an important thing is for people to think about doing too, is how and when to engage with your tribal attorney or tribal council, because often for many tribes, the tribal attorney is overseeing all of the code, the law development for the tribe, and like any other government attorney, they have many things on their plate, and they may not always be thinking about or be having as high a priority on public health as the advocates would be, because they're juggling many things in terms of the business and operations of the tribe, and so. But they're often great champions to have, and so reaching out to them is important. And and in reaching out to Ms. Scheffler and understanding all the things that she was juggling, I think that really informed the committee's decision about how they were going to approach the development of their policy. Because originally the committee was thinking about having it as an ordinance, but then understanding the tribal lawmaking process, realized that that this resolution approach was the better approach for now, because it was going to lay the foundation for future policy making down the road in this area. And then I will also just say too, for people that the ability of the Lower Sioux, their legislative process is less formal than I think many tribes have, and so that also was very helpful to know and understand that there was this flexibility in terms of how the idea could be presented and then signed off on. But that is definitely something that not everybody should count on, because again, some tribes have very, very much more, many more steps that are involved in their legislative process. So that's just important to know, how much flexibility you have. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Julie. Yes, again, thank God for Julie and Lenore on this because, again, I could not have, none of us could have done this without their work because, again, this is a totally different language to to most of us. So, again, all these words being thrown around, ordinance, resolution, policy, it was overwhelming, but Julie did an amazing job of really hammering it out for all of us to understand what the process is here and what the best route would be for all of us. So that was presented to the committee as well as far as what direction we wanted to go once we had a better understanding of the process here. So, so with the resolution calls for policy to support availability of healthy and Indigenous foods and the vending machines at our rec center and our community center. So again, the rec center, our youth typically get off the bus after school every day, run into the rec center, and they usually have a healthy snack actually through our Minnesota Department of Health SHIP program. One of our recreation center employees is under that particular program, and so she provides healthy snacks after school and then in the summer as well. However, some of our kids are there until 8, 9 o'clock at night, and a lot of them have cash on them, and they're going to the vending machines at some point. So at one point when I first started here, our office was actually located in the recreation center. So like I said, there was 4 of us in a small office that shared an office, and so I was watching these kids every day with their Cheeto lips and their 20-ounce bottle of Mountain Dew, and it just, as a dietitian, as a parent, it really bothered me to see that this is what our kids are eating every day when they get off the bus. So since day one when I first started here, that's been something that's always been something I really wanted to see changed here, and in talking with the community and then, of course, the committee, knowing that I wasn't alone in that. So when we started talking about how we wanted to change out the vending machines, these 2 items here became kind of one of the things that we thought were like like Darren mentioned, the low-hanging fruit. So things that we could make changes in relatively easy and quickly. So the process was talking with our vendor, which is Bernix, who we have a contract with through our casino, Jackpot Junction. So we already had a contract at the rec center and the community center with the vending machines that we have. So what we decided as a committee after conversations with Bernix was that instead of doing 50% healthy and 50% considered like the non-healthy or unhealthy, we decided to up it to 75%, and I'll go into that a little bit deeper later on in the presentation here, but that is what was drafted in the resolution. Using pricing and placement to promote healthy items, of course, and calorie information to be provided. So we are going to be starting to work on, or I shouldn't say we are starting, but we haven't quite placed the education pieces on there around the vending machines, both in the community center and the rec center, to help people make better choices, kids and adults as well. So the call for a policy to encourage Wachipi vendors to provide healthy and Indigenous foods. Wachipi would be powwow vendors. So this actually emerged from the Fertile Ground Convening Part 2 that was held in Shakopee in May. So I attended that, and I was blown away by the youth group. It was amazing what the youth had come out after a couple of days of this convening with ideas that they shared with all of us there that were attending this convening. And one of the objectives that one of the youth had mentioned is, why aren't we encouraging our vendors to serve healthy foods at our powwows? And if we do that, can we give them a discount? So I thought, oh my gosh, light bulb. That was awesome. So I was so excited. I got home and talked to one of our tribal councilmen who happens to sit also on our powwow committee and asked them, is this something doable? Because how great would that be? And, luckily he was on board, and he said, yeah, absolutely. I don't see why that should be an issue. So if any of you are familiar, or most of you I'm guessing are familiar and have attended powwows, but obviously a lot of times you see a lot of the fry bread, the not so Indigenous foods that have become the more modern traditional food, I should say, in fry bread. But you don't see a lot of healthy things. I know when I attend, my kids will eat before we go, because we know that there isn't really going to be anything that's not that you can't splurge once in a while, but it is nice if you're there all day to know that you have accessibility to good healthy food. So that was something that emerged from that Fertile Ground convening, that we decided to work with on this initiative. And so That is in the process right now. The powwow committee, I just spoke with one of the members last week. They're going to be meeting here shortly, so this is on their agenda to discuss and place that into their applications, which will be going out here in the next month because our powwow will be held in June, letting the potential vendors know that they will get a 50% discount off of the vendor fee, because they do pay a vendor fee. I want to say, I can't remember if it was $300 or $350 that they pay to have a booth at the powwow. So they'll get a 50% discount if they abide by the nutrition requirements for that. So that was a huge win, and we're really excited to see that this year at our powwow. So, but again, it's not over. We're still working with the committee on that and making sure that is placed in the application for this year's powwow. And then we also have a veterans powwow that we host inside our casino in November, so we're hoping to also add that into that application fee as well. And then the last piece of the resolution here is where we're going to go more in depth here in the rest of the presentation, and that's the calls on the committee to develop a strategic plan and recommendations for other food outlets. So going back to the vending machines, so what we decided to do is a lot of conversations back and forth. I remember this conversation with Julie talking about all these things that, again, I wasn't thinking about as a dietitian. I know that there's all these standards and guidelines, but what do we want to adhere to here with our vending machine? Because say in 5 years, things change over there, or things change in leadership, or my position. We want to know that those standards are still in place. So we decided to go with, because again, the USDA typically they change or they alter, modify their guidelines every 5 years. So if we follow the USDA Smart Snacks guidelines, it'll be more sustainable, I believe. So it's the Smart Snacks, all foods sold in school standards. I did put the link on there. That's kind of a toolkit that link will take you to that basically explains what that is and what those Smart Snacks guidelines actually look like. So we did decide to follow those for 75% of all the vending in our rec center. One thing I wanted to mention too, and I have that on the bottom of the slide here, is so the 25% that's not considered healthy, we did keep some sodas in there. Obviously our kids, again, just providing more accessibility to healthy options, but of those 25%, again, as I mentioned, I see so many of our little ones, 6 to 8 year olds or, high school, the accessibility to the soda pop. Do we need to have it in 20-ounce bottles because they're going to drink the 20 ounces? So can we change that to 12-ounce? And Bernick said, absolutely, we have 12-ounce bottles. I know the rec center staff, again, and talking with the rec center staff who are with the kids every day, see what they're purchasing from the vending machines. It was collaborating and working with them as well on their opinions too, outside of just the committee. So talking with the employees with the rec staff, I mentioned cans of soda, and right away they said, no, please don't get cans because those fall over, they spill, it's just a mess. So something I didn't really think about not working over there. So talking with Bernick and brought that up to them immediately. They said, absolutely, we sell 12-ounce bottles. So that is something that is different over there now too with the new vending machines. So they were actually placed, I think it was a couple days after Christmas, the new vending machines. So they've been over there for about a month now. So in talking with our Bernick's representative, they're very knowledgeable about the Smart Snack guidelines. They actually had a PowerPoint. They had handouts for me to show me that the actual Smart Snack guidelines, but then also what products they have that follow those Smart Snack guidelines, because they are a vendor for many schools in the area as well. So that was really helpful for me. I didn't know what I was going to have to do. I thought, oh my gosh, am I going to have to look up every single product and make sure it's under those guidelines? I didn't have to. They had all that for me, which was absolutely wonderful. And again, they were very accommodating and very positive in talking about the percentage of snacks and beverages that should follow these guidelines. We talked about 50-50, but then I said, what about 100%? What about 75%? They were able to tell me, well, we've had an organization try 100%. It didn't go well. So I said, okay, what about 75%? And they were very positive about that and said, well, why not? I think that is something that you could try. Others have tried it. It works well. So I thought, let's aim a little higher than 50. Let's go for 75. Brought that to the committee, and they agreed as well. So another thing with the vending machines is that we wanted to work with other Native organizations, food producers, and one of them in particular was the Tonka Bar Company, who makes their bison jerky, basically. We wanted to put that in our vending machine. So that, again, is a process that I'm unfamiliar with as far as working with between the vending machine and the Tonka Bar Company So that is something that they're in the process of working with them. Again, I'm sure there's a contract involved and technical things that I don't understand, but they do luckily, so they are in communication and they're working on that, and they're planning on getting the Tonka bars into our vending machines eventually. So we're pretty excited about that as well. Next slide, please, Christine. So the before and after beverages. So on the left there, you can see our previous beverage vending machine over in our rec center. So you had Mountain Dew, we had Pepsi, root beer, Orange Crush, Diet Pepsi, Diet Dr. Pepper, and that Doc, I'm not quite sure what that is. So those are the options the kids had every day, very accessible, very easy to just hit the little hand on the big button there for the soda pop, and those are all 20-ounce bottles. That's what was available. I believe they did also have another vending machine that did have like the water and I think the soda as well. But this machine had a lot of business to it. So to the right now is the current vending machine. There was a bit of a snafu when they were delivered. They were delivered to the wrong building. So the community center and the rec center are right next door to each other. Not a big deal. Was able to call Bernick. They were able to swap them out. So what you're seeing in here, that is supposed to be, and it was moved immediately over to the rec center, but the kids are now offered smaller bottles of juice, so it's 100% fruit juice. The bottom there, they have the regular soda pops in the 12-ounce bottles. We are talking with them about changing things out and seeing what the kids are purchasing right now as well. I know Naked Juice has been over there now too. So again, there's been some changes just in the first month and just kind of seeing what the kids are picking and trying out new products too, because there's some different sparkling waters that we want to try that Bernix offers as well. So a work in progress. Any change is always a work in progress. So and before and after snacks, again on the left, this is what the vending machines looked like before. Again, these vending machines were really outdated from what Bernix had told us, and that definitely not energy efficient. So we were also given brand new machines, which luckily there was no cost involved because we have a contract with them. But the community center employees really liked the fact that we got new machines too, because they were able to utilize their credit card, which they weren't able to use before. So and on the right is the new vending machine. And again, we're working with them on providing different types of snacks as well, as long as they understand that we still have the same guidelines of the 75% healthier guidelines too. And again, those guidelines are under that link too that really narrows down exactly what those guidelines state. So next, I wanted to talk about just a list of accomplishments. Again, this is the second part of that slide that I talked about earlier, and this is just the last 4 months. So up to when the resolution was signed, again, like I talked about with our Community Wellness Dinner on September 20th is when we brought that out to the community, enacted September 20th, 2016. And then we had our clinic staff, our Health and Human Services Department, and then our committee attend a one-day strategic planning session. So again, this was in collaboration with the No to the Gay Foundation, who provided technical support to host strategic planning sessions. So we had 2 different strategic sessions. One was, like I just mentioned, with our committee. We had we actually have Sarah Brokenleg there too from Minnesota Department of Health, which we were excited to have her a part of it as well. We had one of our council members came out for a little bit. So it was a great, amazing day where we really laid out what our vision for overall health in our community would be from the staff's perspective as well as the committee. And another big announcement that we were really excited about with that Aetna grant that I mentioned earlier with the Cultivating Healthy Communities is that we are able to hire 2 of our youth. So we have 2 sophomores that are from Lower Sioux here that applied for the position. We interviewed them, went through the whole process of having them now sit on the committee under the Wachowani program. So we're really excited. We have them for 2 years, which is perfect as they are sophomores now. They'll be seniors at the end of their time with us. But already they've been to 2 meetings. They went to our second strategic planning meeting, and it's so valuable to have youth at the table. I think they can bring so much to us, and there's so many questions that we ask them because, of course, as adults we don't necessarily know what the youth feels about smoking or what they feel about healthy foods and whether they're what the conversation is amongst our youth. So that was really exciting for us and continues to be really exciting. And again, like I mentioned, the healthy vending machines were placed at the end of December of 2016. and I mentioned the vendors at the annual community powwow. So with the strategic planning session, we had a second one just recently on January 16th, but that one was, we had Julie, of course, and we had Melanie and Amanda from ACAF facilitate the planning session, and we asked our committee, so all of the committee members were in attendance except for one, and then we had our 2 youth leaders there as well, and then support staff. So that was an amazing day of really coming down and looking at this this policy, or excuse me, this resolution, and what our next steps are going to be.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of those next steps, but just to kind of recap a little bit. So, you know, the resolution that was passed included, you know, a call by the tribal council for a policy relating to to those vending machines, and also then to establishing the discount for healthy vendors at the annual powwow, and then also calling for the development of this strategic plan. And so, you know, the committee is thinking about, you know, that the vending piece is already being implemented even without that, you know, second step of having an actual sort of law or an ordinance that requires it. It's already being implemented, and so their question is, this is a good systems change, and if it's in the contracts, then, you know, that might be enough. And then with the powwow piece also, that is also being implemented. And so even though, you know, again, this was in a resolution, and the tribe does use ordinances as well, the resolution is already making change. And so then this last piece with the resolution calls for the committee to develop the strategic plan to think about how to promote healthy and indigenous foods across the community. And so one piece that the resolution says the committee should focus on specifically is establishing guidelines or making recommendations about guidelines for food and beverages that are going to be served or provided at community meetings or forums and other events that are happening on the community's property. And so the committee is thinking about collecting examples of different kinds of healthy food at meeting policies to, you know, to look at those and think about how they would implement that. And then the strategic plan also will include something around setting guidelines for the employee dining program, which is called the ADR, which operates out of the restaurant at the casino, and, you know, currently provides a very affordable meal for employees every day. But of course, there's, you know, concerns that the quality, the nutritional quality of the meal maybe could be better. And so thinking about how to improve that, and, you know, even with the small steps, like saying, you know, having one healthy entree a week. I mean, starting small and moving up. It doesn't have to be, you know, super healthy every day of the week at this point. So the committee is weighing those issues. And then thinking about the convenience store and other places within the community where tribal members get food, to think about how they can increase the availability and also increase purchases of healthier food and beverages within those types of outlets. Because of course you want to make sure that you don't just want to make sure that if you put the healthy food out there, that there's going to be a market base for it, that people are going to want to buy it. So those two have to go hand in hand. And then the last part of the strategic plan component included just kind of a catch-all, so that as the committee was doing this work and thinking about how across the community they wanted to make recommendations to improve the food environment, you know, if they came across something else, because you don't know what you don't know when you're starting out, and so leaving room that if there was another challenge or issue identified, then the committee had room to make recommendations about that as well to the tribal council. And so the committee is collecting information and thinking about that, and will be honing in on these pieces here over the next couple months to make that set of recommendations. Stacy, was there anything else I should say about that?
I don't think so. I think you covered it.
Okay. I was going to ask if you wanted to say anything about the name of the resolution.
Oh yeah, so yeah, that too was a process. Melanie and Amanda helped, really help us brainstorm what we wanted to, this was a big deal. What do we name this? So we actually spent some time at one of our meetings putting together the name and came up with 4 possibilities, and the committee voted on that. So I think, the first part of the resolution, I think we had it originally as the Healthy and Indigenous Foods resolution, but then Beth O'Keefe, our chairwoman, had told us the story of Little Crow. So, in that we should be honoring him with this resolution. As, history tells us, he was killed while picking raspberries because he wasn't on tribal land. So, again, bringing history into the conversation here too, and really remembering why this work is so important, and how our ancestors before us really had to fight for the right to eat the foods that were off the land here. So that was part of the conversation with why we decided to then add the honoring Little Crow to the beginning of the resolution as well. So with the planning activities, again, Amanda and Melanie put together a great activities to really, really help us hone in and stay focused on what our tasks were for the day. So we did review the resolution. We had a talking circle, which was great, just in having conversation again and coming together as a committee, because we haven't met since November. We took December off with the holidays and just busy schedules. So bringing everyone back to the table and talking about what are the next steps here now with the resolution. Now that we have it passed, we had a 6-month window in there that we were going to bring the strategic plan to the Tribal Council, which is coming up in March. So we were tasked to develop recommendations and actions for strategic planning components. And so with that, we looked at each of those pieces that Julie just talked about, A, B, C. So looking at, with A, guidelines for food and beverages provided at our meetings, forums, and other events occurring on the Lower Sioux property, questions we had to think about is, applying those guidelines towards foods at events and meetings. How do we get there? Who are our key stakeholders? That was a big thing, is making sure that we're talking maybe with the marketing people at our C-store, identifying and engaging all of our stakeholders. So in talking with casino management and those working in the food and beverage areas, and then talking with different departments here within our community. We host a lot of different events through our social services department, the recreation center department, and bringing them to the table as well on what they see as, what we want to have placed into this next phase. And then with the Plan B for the guidelines for the ADR program that Julie mentioned too, things that we were thinking about is, what does that mean? 2 of the committee members that are sitting, 2 members that are sitting on our committee right now actually work at our casino, and so they are very well aware of what is available to them as employees at the ADR. Their meal is $3.50. That's a great price, but at the same time, they're not happy with the nutrition that they're being offered. They would like to have accessibility to better food. And another thing that they have over at the casino is they do offer free soda all day to employees. So that is something that we all started thinking about again, talking with our stakeholders over there at the casino, including the manager and employees, doing employee surveys over there on what are some of their ideas, what are they already doing right now, what are some barriers to those changes, and real and perceived as well. So again, framing those questions and to helping us come up with solutions for that are ways to for the future of the process. So with C, we looked at increasing availability and purchase of health-promoting foods and beverages in stores and other community food outlets. So in that piece too, talking about signs, shelf tags, promotional items, things that we can place on tables within our C-store. So how our products are organized, displayed, eventually talking about maybe having a sugary drink tax, looking at something like that. So obviously that conversation with Tribal Council as well. So it was a very heavy day. We were there from, I believe it was 10 to 3:30, and we got a lot accomplished. It was a really, really good day. So next slide, please. So next steps, just heard from Melanie and Amanda yesterday. So we talked, they sent me an email, and we kind of went back and forth on what our next steps are going to look like. We were meeting on February 9th. So we're going to be working on completing an action planning template that they've already created for focus areas with the committee members. So again, breaking it down into those 3 key areas, A, B, C, and then D would be any additional items that we may have to we might want to tackle as well. and narrowing it down by quarters. Who's going to accomplish this? Who's going to work on these different pieces? And when do we want? What is the timeline for that? So that'll be our next steps with that. And then taking and working with Melanie and Amanda at ACAS, and of course Julie, and then some of our key, Darren and I, and key Lower Sioux staff to prepare this final report, and then presenting that at our March meeting to the committee for review and approval of the document. And then our next step then will be hopefully getting it to Tribal Council by March 20th. So a lot to do yet.
Yes, but so Stacy and I just thought it would be helpful to kind of recap for everyone the general process when it comes to policy making, and and many of the steps that the committee covered were all kind of touched on here. But this is when I think about policy development, I really do think of it as a journey. It's not just about the end goal, but it's also about how you get there. And so all of these stages, and and this is kind of in order, but also not really. I mean, things can happen at different points in time, but all of these points are important to touch on. And the Lower Sioux Health and Human Services Advisory Committee really did hit all of these points. And the last point I wanted just to make about this was just how important stakeholder engagement is in this whole process. That it's not just one step, it's actually something that informs every step of the way. And I think especially when I think about tribal communities and how important it is to have as much as possible a kind of consensus and just agreement about the direction to go, that the stakeholder engagement piece is really, really important. And that, even though I think the Lower Sioux Health and the committee here did a lot of work around this, we were talking at this last meeting about how there's still more to do with stakeholder engagement too, but engaging, talking to the vendor as Stacy did, and talking with the tribal chairman, and talking with the casino culinary staff, and talking with youth, and having these community dinners. All of these were really important in terms of leading to a good policy outcome. And that's a good segue to the next point, right?
Yes, exactly. So I just wanted to talk briefly about the power of collaboration and partnership. So none of this, couldn't have taken place with all of the partnerships that we have with various organizations, and then also working within our own community here with all of our departments as well. And that's all departments. That's finance, that's grant management, that's recreation, social services. So in talking with different foundations, I apologize I didn't place Aetna on here, but I mentioned Aetna previously as another funder that is a part of our work now. And so, working with these different organizations throughout this entire process has been key, I think. With the Notah Gay Foundation, I wanted to mention, too, with the strategic planning meetings that we hosted, again, that was an idea that they provided technical support for us to get that plan started as well. I mean, it's something we've talked about, but until the opportunity was there and the funding was there, made it become a reality. And with that, I wanted to mention, too, that through that program, now we have 2 youth leaders sitting on our committee. So, and, the IHS Special Diabetes Program for Indians, that is actually my position here, is funded through Indian Health Services. So just a lot of collaboration with a lot of different great organizations. So, and lastly, I wanted to talk about the importance of engaging and garnering tribal leadership support. So we were connecting and talking with leadership throughout this entire process and beforehand. I mean, we talked with them in forming the committee in the first place. Like, can we even form this committee? And this is why we think we should be forming this committee. Bringing the voices of your community to them through survey results, focus groups, so letting them know that we are talking with the community, and here's the results of what they want to see. So one of the surveys we did at the kickoff event in March of last year, we had surveys, and we had our Notah Gay project coordinator, Courtney, put it together in a PowerPoint and provide that to Tribal Council to say, hey, look at this, look at what our youth are saying, look at what our adults are saying about the health of our community and what changes they want to see. And then engaging them by conducting a tribal leadership visioning project. So we had asked ACAF to come and facilitate this, where they met one-on-one with each of our tribal councilmen and asked them different questions, different survey questions on how they view the health of our community, what priorities they're focusing on, and goals they have set for supporting the health of the people for generations to come. So that was a really cool project. So that'll lead to the next slide here. So this is what ACAF put together. They have a final report that we presented to council as well, so that they could kind of see, because they weren't sitting in a room together with these interviews. They were one-on-one with an ACAF staff member, so they were given the same questions. And so again, I think having ACAF coming in and facilitating that was better than maybe one of our staff members talking with them one-on-one. So it was great that they came out and did this, and then presented this in a PowerPoint that we had playing throughout the evening at our wellness dinner, just the images that you'll see. So that's coming up on the next slide as well. I just put in a couple of slides that really resonated, I thought. So these were quotes from some of our tribal leaders, again, that Melanie and Amanda put together in these slides. So one of our tribal council members mentioned, the biggest thing is listening. We as leaders need to know what members want so that we can go forward in that direction and guide our work to fulfill the needs of the community. And then the next slide. With increased access to educational resources and increased awareness, community members will be able to make informed decisions to support the health and well-being of their families. And then the last slide I included is promote healthy initiatives. So identify supportive funding sources, secure grants, and put people in positions who are passionate, energetic, and educated and can produce results. So it was great for us as staff members, community members ourselves, but also with the committee being, having this knowledge and knowing that our leaders are behind this work and understand the importance of this work. As Julie mentioned, leadership as well as our attorney here as well have a lot on their plate, a lot of issues, and health may not always be at the top of their priority list, but we know that they do feel that it is important, and they've shown that they support us with this resolution. So lastly, I just wanted to throw this slide on there. This is a visual representation of our strategic planning day that we held on September 29th with our clinic staff and committee and health and social services staff. So we asked for the company called Drawn Well came out, and the artists came out for the day and just listened to our conversations, our strategic planning day, and put it into a visual representation. So we have a really large banner made out that we have hanging up our clinic right now for our community members and staff and everyone that comes into our clinic to see what we're hoping our future looks like here at the Lower Sioux Indian community.
So I know we're just about out of time, and I was wanting to make sure we had at least a couple minutes for questions. So I think, Chris, will the slides be available for people, like through email or something?
Yeah, we'll post them on Basecamp, so everyone should have access to them.
Okay, because then we can just cruise through these. These were just other, additional resources out there to support work in this area, so you can get those off the slides at your leisure if you would like. So that's again, just thank you very much for your attention and for joining us and having us. And I don't know if there's time for questions or not.
Yeah, I think we'll take a couple minutes for questions. I'm not sure if people have to get off or not, but I think we should have some time.
I know we thought we would actually get done earlier and let people off earlier, so I guess it's good we had the whole time.
I guess so. Yeah. I think when Julie and I start talking about this stuff, it's hard to get us to stop.
Yes.
Well, this is Lorraine. I just wanted to say it was good to hear how this went down in your community, and I'm sure that people who are listening are kind of in their own minds, like I was, transferring the information to see how they could make it work in their communities. And so we appreciate you guys sharing. One of the things I just wanted to ask about is I think people would be interested in having the contact information of the company or the person that drew your little infographic. So could we somehow share that information too?
Of the slide that I just showed at the very end from Drawn Well that I mentioned, is that one you're talking about? That one right there? Okay. Yeah, absolutely. On the bottom right, you can see where it says drawnwell.com. That is actually the, it was recorded by, it's an artist named Lisa Troutman. But I can get that information to Chris and he can get that out as well. But I believe you can go on her website and she should have everything on there, how to work with her on that. But she was absolutely amazing. I mean, obviously you can see, I mean, we were blown away as she was drawing it. But it was a really great visual representation of our day.
Yeah, I think that would be great to share with even those who couldn't be on the call today. So it would be a good idea.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
So if there's no more questions, I just wanted to say thank you to Julie and Stacy for sharing all of their work that they do with this. And it was really nice to hear the story of how everything happened. So thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. And I do have that if there is anyone still on the line, it is actually, I have her email address in front of me. Her name is Lisa Troutman. So her email address is Lisa, Lisa, at Drawnwell, DRAWNWELL.com. So that's her actual email address. But as I mentioned, I believe you can find her information on drawnwell.com on her website as well.
Yeah, and if you could just forward that to me, I can share that with everyone too.
Okay, sure. Yep. Yes, thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.